A huge day for anyone who cares about finally getting to the truth about Antifa. Who are they? How is it organized? What kind of destruction do they wreak on all of the major cities in this country? How is it targeting Republicans, conservatives, law enforcement, basic institutions? What's their end game? Who's funding them? And what can we finally do to stop these violent thugs? Up until this last election, we never had a president who would actually even acknowledge that they existed, or an FBI or Justice Department either. Why? Well, because they were their soldiers. They were doing their bidding. They were helping their cause. Some members of the media are still doing that. Aaron Burnett on CNN literally repeated fake talking points about Antifa. And we're going to expose the truth behind her lies. Coming up in just a second. But first, just to remind you who Antifa is, take a look at this and you tell me if this looks like an organized group of violent terrorists or not.
Stop! No, they're assaulting someone. They're assaulting an innocent guy. What's wrong with you? They're assaulting an innocent.
You caused it. You just touched me. Do not touch me. I'm not touching you.
I swear to God, if you run over my foot right now.
Oh. You should go before I get
All right, so that is from independent journalist Brandy Cruz in Seattle. Can you notice how they're all dressed the same? Do you notice how they are all equipped? Do you notice how they all have tactics? Do you notice how they all move in a group and coordinated at various times? You've seen videos like this all the time. There's also the videos where they use umbrellas to hide their behavior and their movements and their faces from security cameras or ring cameras or whatever. It's all very planned. It's all very trained, and it's all very organized. It's Antifa. It's who they are. Brandy Cruz, by the way, used to be a left-wing Democrat in Seattle. She's now become, after watching behavior like this, an anti-Antifa independent journalist. She was at the White House yesterday. You'll hear from her in just a second. But first, here's your FBI director, Kash Patel, singing a very different tune from his predecessor, Christopher Wray, who famously said, Antifa isn't really an organized group. It's really more of an idea. What the hell?
President, the American people gave you a sweeping mandate in your victory in this election cycle, and they demanded safety and security for our citizens. And your administration, with your leadership, has provided us with the resources that we need, which is a whole of government approach to go after criminals absolutely everywhere, not just outside of this country, but within this country. And that takes a whole of government approach. The interagency seated up here with the Department of Homeland Security, our Attorney General, our Deputy Attorney General, and your White House staffers, including Stephen Miller's leadership, has allowed us to go out there and map out these networks. What we are doing at the FBI is simple. It does not require rocket science. We are following the money. Money never lies. And that's what it's going to take to bring down this network of organized criminal thugs, gangbangers, and yes, domestic terrorists, because that's what they are. They are harming everyday citizens in every single one of our communities. And the folks you see here on the right and left, they're some of the bravest men and women we have today. They're reporting the stories live time because the mainstream media won't cover it. They're putting their lives on the line. They're standing up for the flag. The least we can do is stand up for them. So you have my thanks. I read more of your stories than I do theirs because you guys are putting out the truth. And we deserve a country where you are protected as equally as they are. We in this FBI will go after with the criminals with a vengeance. We will not rest until we find every single seed, money, donor, organization, and funding mechanism that we have. And I want to echo the Secretary's comments on Scott Bessent, who's allowing us to map out these networks through their financial criminal activities, which has been going on for decades. And I would like to remind the American public, they built this disease temple of corruption over decades. And in 8 short months, Mr. President, you have crippled their foundation because of your leadership here, because of the interagency, because of people like Deputy Attorney General Blanche, and because of Attorney General Pam Bondi's fearless leadership to go after criminals wherever they are.
All right, so that just there, what you heard, sent a shiver into the spine of the leadership and organizational structure of Antifa. He's following the money. Money never lies. And Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is helping them. identify the network. And they named names here in terms of the network of funders for Antifa. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, as they've been mentioning, it's all independent journalists who are covering this story. Nobody with a big budget, nobody from the networks, nobody from the major newspapers covering this story. Here's one of them. His name is Jonathan Cho. He's a reporter in Seattle. He started covering the homeless crisis in Seattle and the homeless encampments, and he identified what he calls the homeless industrial complex, all the people who make money off of criminal vagrancy. There's a lot of government money in states like Oregon, Washington, and California that go to supposedly help alleviate the homeless crisis. A lot of people get rich off that, and they're directly connected, as you'll see, to this Antifa movement. Watch.
For far left extremism, as well as the homeless drug crisis in America. And I find it oftentimes those worlds intersect. And hot off the presses, what I wanted to bring to your attention today is a report from a Capital Research Center here in DC in conjunction with Discovery Institute. They just put out this study right now. And what it shows is that Antifa is heavily embedded in the homeless and housing nonprofit sector. In many cases, the homeless industrial complex is running cover for Antifa. Antifa is benefiting from American tax dollars, and they're essentially being used as the muscle. Let me give you an example. There's a group called Stop the Sweeps in many US cities right now. They get in front of encampment sweeps. What they're doing quietly is they're bringing in Antifa militants to manufacture a crisis to make the police look bad. Another group right now that is behind Antifa and working with Antifa very closely, based on the research that we have right now that we're going to give to you and your team, are the Democratic Socialists of America, also known as DSA. Again, these far left progressive groups tend to be aligning themselves with Antifa.
Yeah, and DSA, by the way, for those of you not paying attention, that's Zoran Mamdani's proud political party in New York, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar's. Jonathan Cho, by the way, I've interviewed him several times. He's not a conservative. He's not a right-winger. He's not MAGA. He's just looking for the truth. He's actually liberal, last I checked, up in Seattle. But I love that they're actually naming names. Now, when you're talking about these non-government organizations and how they play the shell game with the money to hide their nefarious operations, there's no group better to find that money and trace the dollars than the Government Accountability Institute. That's the group headed up by the incredible Peter Schweitzer. You read his books, you see he traces the money to all of this stuff. And they had a representative there at this meeting yesterday. Take a listen to this.
I think we know that this is not just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweitzer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network, it's other funding networks, the Arabella funding network, the Tides funding network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss of Switzerland. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share 3 money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number one, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number two, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, et cetera. And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism, these groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So
taxpayer money, federal tax dollars directed to these groups that then fund what they call Riot Inc. It's big business tearing down the cities of America, tearing down law enforcement, and wreaking violent, destructive havoc in our communities. Riot Inc. I love that this event happened. I love that they're naming names, that they're bringing proof, they're bringing evidence, they're showing the trail of money. Did you see any of this last night on the news? Any at all? We saw a little bit of it, mostly on Fox News. Here's two of the members of that panel. Andy Ngo, again, a man of the left out of Portland. He's been reporting on Antifa. He's been a victim of Antifa. They want to kill Andy Ngo because he's been telling the truth of them. And then Savannah Hernandez with, I think she's with Blaze. She was on with, they were both on with Laura Ingraham.
How important is this moment now, given what happened to Charlie, the 2 assassination attempts on Trump, the ICE facilities, the attack on the Catholic students in Minneapolis? The list goes on and on.
Yeah, the list goes really long. We don't have any more time to lose. And I think that's where earlier today I suggested that the DOJ could look at federal felony conspiracy charges. That was done in San Diego County last year, and that prosecutor successfully broke up an Antifa cell. The State Department can designate the international arms of Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, and open individuals up to sanctions.
That's right. And that's when you really get serious about stopping this kind of behavior on our shores, here in our country. Here's Savannah Hernandez picking up the point.
Do you think, Savannah, and what you saw today, you had Bondi there, you had Patel, the president himself, they're serious.
Oh, absolutely, Laura. And this is such a change from the past administration who, quite frankly, ignored independent journalists like ourselves and completely ignored what was going on in the streets of America. Now, journalists like myself have had to come to Portland to report on what is going on because Andy himself can no longer do that. We've had to pick up the torch for Andy because he was so brutally assaulted, and this is still continuing today. So to see the administration take this seriously is a breath of fresh air. To see Antifa declared a domestic terrorist organization and the entirety of the admin care enough to listen to the journalists who have been demonized by the same media that was in the room with us was an incredible move in the right direction.
By the way, forgive me, she's with Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's group, as a on-the-ground journalist and analyst for them. Did you hear what she said, though? Andy Ngo has been brutally attacked by these people. He's a reporter, and he's been attacked. He lost sight in one of his eyes for quite some time because of the attack on him. They threw concrete blocks at him. Where's Jake Tapper and all of the guardians of the First Amendment and freedom of the press championing this guy? Where's his awards for going into the belly of the beast as a war correspondent here at home and getting attacked like this? Where are they celebrating him and joining him? No, it takes a Turning Point USA reporter and some of our town hall reporters as well to do the job. We'll show you him in a minute. Here's another one on Jesse Waters last night. This is Nick Shirley, who was at the table.
Yeah, well, they're mad because the truth is being shown. Antifa has been running their operation in a building right next to an ICE facility for over 100 days. And legacy media has never even gone to show what was happening there. And it just took a few independent journalists like myself to show America what was actually happening.
I mean, they're accusing you guys of recycling video that's like 4 years old. I mean, what have you seen recently that just shocked you?
Yeah, just how Portland PD, they would not stand up for the independent journalists when it was very obvious. There was video footage of them getting attacked by some of these Antifa members, and it just happened that for some reason these independent journalists could actually beat these Antifa guys in a fight when it came down to it. And they
look at the images, look at the videos, look at what's going on in these streets, and this is not a story. This is not a story on any of the other channels. Oh, well, actually, it is a story over on CNN. Erin Burnett, she covered it, but she covered it kind of with a different angle. This is Baghdad Bob level propaganda here. Watch what she had to say. This is disgusting.
And Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security actually took that further.
This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous.
That's pretty incredible, right? Hamas has just been engaged in a 2-year war that we just announced the first stage of a peace plan to a few moments ago. And ISIS, these are incredible things to say. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and defend anybody who considers themselves part of an Antifa movement, such that it is. But such that it is the operative part of that sentence. Antifa is far from a major sophisticated terror organization like Hezbollah, Hamas, or ISIS. In fact, it's not even like far-right groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which have had national leaders, unlike Antifa. There is no organized hierarchy to the group. And according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, I just want to make sure you heard this part.
I'm not going to sit here and defend anybody who considers themselves part of an Antifa movement, such that it is.
Except that's exactly what she did. I love it when journalists do this. Journalists, teleprompter readers. Listen, I'm not going to carry any water for Antifa and then do 5 minutes of distortion and propaganda, literally, all right, figuratively carrying water for Antifa. That's exactly what she did. I'm not here to defend Antifa, so now sit back and enjoy while I defend Antifa. Now, you heard that last little part there about this study.
But such that it is the operative part of that sentence. Antifa is far from...
Hang on.
Hierarchy to the group. And according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
There you go. The real violence out there is from right-wingers. All right. Who was that group again? Center for Strategic and International Studies. Okay. Over at the Post Millennial, they've got a write-up on that group and specifically about the report that Aaron Burnett just cited on CNN. Let's read along together, shall we? The Center for Strategic and International Studies includes jihad Islamic terror attacks as right-wing. Did you hear me? Islamic terrorism is categorized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies as right-wing violence. Jihadis who try to kill innocent Americans and Jews is categorized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies as right-wing terrorism. It's even worse. Even though those attacks, like those carried out against Israel by Hamas in 2023, are supported by the American left and not the American right, left-wing attacks are remarkably less lethal overall than jihadist or right-wing attacks, they write in their report. Part of their definition of what constitutes right-wing terrorism includes opposition to government authority, believing it is tyrannical and illegitimate. That's literally exactly what Antifa stands for. Those are the views, as the Postmillennial writes, held by Antifa and leftists who march against the federal government's intervention in American cities. So understand this. If you are marching against ICE right now and you start throwing rocks and you create a violent attack against ICE agents, the Center for Strategic and International Studies will call that right-wing violence because it's opposition to government authority. Make it, and this is the study that Aaron Burnett just cited on the air. There's more. The report doesn't include all of the attacks on Tesla dealerships, Tesla owners. It doesn't include leftist violence. The firebombing of Governor Josh Shapiro's home, they don't call that left-wing violence. Or the assassination of the Israeli embassy workers on the streets of Washington, D.C. That wasn't left-wing violence, according to them. The report further leaves out the direct attacks on federal ICE agents, like those of which Antifa has been directly involved in Portland, Oregon, and other locations. So it's real easy for Aaron Burnett to cite this study and say, well, you know, whatever Antifa is doing out there, it's nothing compared to right-wing violence, because the report actually calls left-wing violence right-wing violence. They just lie. They just lie. Or they don't cover the story at all. Over here on this program, we're produced by Town Hall, of course, and our former colleague, Julio Rosas, made a name for himself going into the belly of the beast. He's a retired Marine, and now he takes his fighting instincts with a camera, and he records exactly what these people have been doing, and he's been doing it since 2019.
President, for having us here. And, not to sound like a broken record, but it needs to be said that Antifa is real.
Yeah.
It's real. It's a threat. I just saw them last weekend over in Portland while they're causing mayhem over there. And the reason why they're such a big problem is because we have Democrats and a lot of people in the mainstream media refusing to acknowledge that they even exist, right? So how can we as a country begin to address it is when you have large swaths of, these people who are supposedly decision makers and people who are supposed to inform, they don't want to say that it exists. Because the common argument is like, well, they're not a real organization because there's no national leadership. They don't have a national headquarters. So how can law enforcement go after a group that doesn't exist like that? Law enforcement goes after criminal groups that organize to rob banks or do smash and grabs. They don't have a registered LLC. They don't have official membership cards. They don't have, a business address. But law enforcement still goes after them because they're working as a group. These people don't just show up, randomly at the same time to do the same thing, dressed in a very similar fashion, espousing the same ideology. And they say, well, it's an ideology. It's like, well, yes, it's an ideology because there's people alive, present, that believe in it, and they're acting on it. And so I've been very well aware of what Antifa's been doing. I was very busy during the riots in 2020. That was probably my most exposure to them prior to this year. I've been at the ICE facility at Broadview. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, unfortunately, but that's where I grew up around. Like I said, I was in Portland. I was covering the riots in Los Angeles as well. And probably one of the most disturbing parts about that is, in addition to Antifa being present, they were tagging the streets with CJNG, which is Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, which is a cartel. So you have these people who are working basically in concert with other terrorist groups to say that we're here, we're present, and we're gonna attack federal agents. And
that's right. That's Julio Rosas. So take a look at all of his remarks. You can find it on his X account. But we're proud of our friend Julio, even though he got a little big for his britches and went independent. We're still part of the Town Hall family over here, Julio. I kid. We started with that video of Antifa activities in Seattle by Brandy Cruz. Brandy Cruz was there, and there was a lighthearted moment that we want to end with here. She was telling her story to the president, and she said this.
I'm living proof that you can recover from TDS. I had strong Trump derangement syndrome for probably 8 years. This is one of the reasons I recovered from it. And by the way, it's much better to not have TDS. I'm happier, I'm healthier, more successful. I even think I got a little more attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes.
Real fast, I don't know if you heard that. The president chimes in and says, very attractive. Which I just like that was his instinct there. Did you hear it? Listen for the president.
Attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. I'm a reporter in Seattle, and frankly, I could not care any less what any of you have to say about this meeting. Could not care any less. We're not here for you. I'm not here to convince any of you that Antifa is a real thing, because if you have not come to that conclusion by now, you are never going to come to that conclusion because you don't want to see it. And you're going to go and you're going to say it's a bunch of right-wing conservative influencers who are here spinning a tale. I was one of you. I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years. I was a TV reporter on the streets doing my job, and I was still assaulted by Antifa. So it's not about being conservative. It's about people who go there and show what they're doing. And when I saw, after all those years, that the media wouldn't be honest about what was happening, that Democratic politicians wouldn't be honest about what was happening, I thought, well, gosh, if they're not being honest about that, maybe they're not being honest about President Trump either. And it opened my mind to just looking at things for what they were. And now I find you quite funny, actually. Now it's like I said, I'm much happier.
Listen, like I said earlier when we were talking about the peace deal, everybody has a moment, I think, where things start to clarify for them politically, spiritually, morally, ethically. And I wonder, just as Brandy Cruz just explained, as you look at the reality of Antifa, when you see the violence, when you see the obvious organization, and now as we start to peel back and reveal the financial structures and the funding, I wonder how many people will be sick and tired of either mainstream journalists just ignoring this story, these legacy corporate media members just pretending like it doesn't exist, which is offensive and insulting of your intelligence, or even worse, when you see what Aaron Burnett did, or when you see other journalists who will, yes, acknowledge that this thing is a thing. They'll show you the video, but then they'll try to convince you, oh, but it's not organized. Well, they sure look organized. How did they all show up at the same time at the same place? But it's not actually anything that has any sort of nefarious structure, really, because they're all wearing the same clothes and they're all coordinated. They look like they've been practicing and rehearsing and training and drilling. They're all dressed and carrying the same kind of weapons and shields and protective gear. And it's not organized. It's not structured. It's not. At what point do you do what Brandy Cruz does and have a light go off and say, whoa, you're lying to me. And if you lie to me about this, what else are you lying to me about? And then the next thing you know, you become much more attractive.